Welcome to the Bag Makers Workroom. I'm Chris of Simply Classic, and today's Thursday, May 14th, 2026. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We go live every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. If you can't join live, watch the recording on YouTube at any time. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when I post a new video. Now, speaking of which, I want to take a moment to say thank you to all of you, every single one of you, because we just reached 20,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. It's really a huge milestone, and I am so grateful to this amazing community. So thank you, everyone. This is you. I appreciate it. So I want to say hi to a few people in the chat. And we have Donna Stafford from Wisconsin. Hello. Of course, we weren't too far from you last week. Let's see who else we have. We have Sonia, and she says TGIT. Thank God it's Thursday. I'm so glad it's Thursday. Excellent. And then Robin is here from Mesa, Arizona. So thank you so much for everybody for joining us this evening. Our theme tonight is rolled handles, and here's what we have planned. We're going to start by going over what's new in the Simply Classic Scoop. We'll take a look at some designer bag inspiration. Then I'm going to show you how to make a real leather rolled handle. We're going to feature our customers' bags and Artistry Avenue. And finally, we'll do some giveaways at the end for some patterns on Q&A. So before we get started, please take a second to click the thumbs up button below. It really does make a difference, and I do really appreciate it. Now, before we move on to the Simply Classic Scoop, I do want to mention one thing. We had a little bit of an issue where somebody on either YouTube or Facebook was saying that somebody had won a pattern, there was some kind of scammer on there. So just know that we will never reach out to you and tell you that you have won something where you have to respond to us. It's you need to watch, and if you win, you reach out to us and we give you the email to do that. So understand, if you ever get an email from us saying you won, we want some information from you, it's not us, okay? So we just kind of beware, okay? There's a lot of scammers out there. So now it's time for the Simply Classic Scoop, and this is where I tell you what's new here at Simply Classic. We've had a few busy weeks, I have to say. There's a lot to talk about today. So the first thing I want to mention is our live stream schedule for the next few months. So we have kind of updated the schedule, and you can see here what we're going to be doing. This week, my team and I, of course, planned, and I say my team and I planned it. Shauna did most of it. Got to give credit where credit's due. She's amazing. But when I looked at my calendar through August through October, we scheduled through the end of July, and when we got to August, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be here much, August, September, and October. So we're going to take a little break from the Bag Makers Workroom. Now, that doesn't mean I won't be recording. I'll be, maybe putting out some videos of some free patterns. Of course, we'll continue to do our sew-alongs, but we'll return in November when things are a little less busy and I'm here, because it's kind of hard to try to, while I'm in here in between, record episodes. And so we're just going to take a little break. Okay. So again, we'll still have plenty for you to do. I'll be posting videos, and we'll be doing some fun stuff. So just make sure you stay tuned. We, of course, appreciate your support. Now, the reason why I'm so busy is that I will be traveling, and I have been invited to teach bag making workshops in Louisiana, Idaho, Arizona, California, Ohio. I'm going to be all over the place. And of course, I'll also be in at the Sack Bag and Sew Expo. So check out the events page on our website. We are updating it all the time. And the more that we schedule these events, the more we'll be updating that page. So I hope that you can find an event that's close to you and come out and take a class and see me. I would love to meet all of you in person. I'm also working with Pennsylvania and Houston, Texas. So, it's amazing. We're really getting out there, and I really appreciate all of the shops for, taking the time to have me come in. I appreciate Janome for partnering with me on that. And also all of you, because you have to support your local shops. And obviously we encourage you to do so. They're there for you. So make sure that you support them. So next I want to show you these amazing Zara's from our sew along in April with Shanova Mabry from That's So Nova. We met on Zoom and spent the afternoon making the Zara shoulder bag, but instead of the pattern the way it was, we hacked it in a couple different ways. So I did a different front panel, like a striped front panel, which you can see here on these bags. Jess, Elaine, Rebecca, and actually Becky made two, and then Lisa all made those striped panels. And then Shanova actually did a hack with a braided handle, which you can see here on Becky's first bag. You can see that braided handle there. Absolutely gorgeous. I was really in awe of how she did that, and I can't wait to get it. I mean, I haven't sewn in probably about a month, right? I'm going through withdrawals. I cannot wait to sit down and sew so I can try that hack. It is really amazing. So we try to host a sew along every month. We didn't have time in May, again, because I was traveling so much, but we've already planned the sew along for June, and it's going to be a hack on the little Leah. So I'm really excited about that. So the day after this Zara sew along, Taylor and I hopped on a plane to Chicago, and we were there for the Fiber and Fabric Craft Festival, as well as H&H Americas. And that is a conference for the textile industry. So here you can see some photos of our booth. Taylor set up, you can see on the left here, this really beautiful table of our faux leather samples, caught a lot of attention. And we had a little bit of everything available for sale. We also met some of you, which is my favorite part. You can see here a bunch of photos. I think every single one of these people you see in these photos came out specifically because I was at the show and they wanted to come meet me. That is such an honor to me when somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I came to the show specifically to see you. I mean, that's just, it warms my heart. So I really do appreciate all of you taking that time out of your busy day and making the effort to come and see us at the show. It was a really amazing event. So we also, of course, were at the wholesale, what we call the wholesale show, which is called H&H. And this here is our booth set up. We have a fellow friend, Mike. You can see him there with the goat. If any of you have heard of goat totes, Mike is a great friend of mine. And Taylor's, you can see Taylor's there posing with him with a goat. And of course, we were in the brewer booth, and there was, they have, of course, a bunch of different brands that they carry. And it was a great show. So we also saw Shawn Amaker while I was there, and you may know her from the Facebook group or past sew-alongs. She owns a company called Go Savvy Designs, and she is a very talented bag maker. I want to give her a shout out because she hosts a weekly live stream as well. They're every Sunday at 7 p.m. Central Time. 6 p.m. Central Time or 7 p.m. Eastern Time. She calls them Sunday Fun Day, and she covers a lot of great topics. So give her a follow, go on her YouTube channel, give her a follow, check out her videos, and maybe we're kind of planning, maybe we can do a double stitch episode with her in the future, maybe sometime this summer. So stay tuned for that. So I have a few product updates that I want to share with you as well. First, we just restocked our faux leather mystery boxes. So we only have 10 available right now. What happens is we cut bolts, and when we cut bolts, we have product that doesn't look so great. Sometimes it has lines in it or a hole in it, or it just doesn't pass our quality control standards. And so we stick them in a mystery box. Usually about 80 to 90% of it's usable. These do sell out fast. Every mystery box has 6 rolls of, we call it not quite so perfect faux leather, and vinyl in the box, and it's $75. So that's 40% off retail prices. So if you haven't got one recently and you want to do that, make sure you go out and grab one before we run out. We'll have more again, once we cut. We just need to find the time to do that in the space. So I also want to give you a sneak peek of some new leather that we just got from Italy. So on Monday when we were in Chicago, we got our leather order that I keep telling you is coming, and we finally have received it. So we're in the process of, doing a quality control check on it and organizing it, because when we get it, we just buy it wholesale. So we get it in big bundles, and we have to split it up square feet wise and do a little conversion from square meters to square feet and all kinds of good stuff. So we're going to go to the overhead because I just want to show you a little sample of some of the lamb skins that we got in. So these are the solids. Now I do actually have a suede here. The suede is goat. Okay, this is the black suede, but these others are lambskin. And you can see we have a lot of different colors. We obviously tried to get some of the colors that all of you gravitated more towards than others. A lot of times we have colors like yellows and stuff that maybe, they're not as popular. So we tried to stick to some of the more popular colors. So, I think that probably I tend to gravitate towards these colors here, these kind of pinkish colors. But these purples, are always very, very beautiful. And of course, this suede is really great. There are other printed versions as well, or printed colors. And so we'll show you those at a later time. We've got some really cool things. So we are going to eventually here in the next probably a couple of weeks, I'll probably talk to you about it next week. We were going to have a live leather sale, and the live leather sale is going to include two things. It's going to include some of our new hides, which this is just a very small portion of those. And it's also going to include some pretty deep discounts on hides that we have had sitting in the warehouse that we need to kind of clear out space so we can put the new hides on. So make sure you be listening out for that. It'll probably be on a Friday afternoon like it was last time. We'll have it in the warehouse, and we'll go ahead and see if we can unload some of these hides to you. I know that you really enjoyed it. The last one was a real success, so we're very excited about it. Got to get them organized first, so we will do that as soon as possible and get back to you on that. So before we move on, I need to pick our giveaway winners from the last few episodes. So every week we give away a PDF pattern of your choice to someone, and the last two episodes were pre-recorded, so that means I have 3 winners to choose today. So we have the name of everyone who entered here. We're going to go ahead and pull them to the overhead. And we've got 3 different ones, like I said. All right, so we've got the May 7th. We have one from April 30th. And then we have one from April 23rd. So we're going to take these one by one. So on April 23rd, I asked you, what is your favorite type of top handle bag? Okay. And let's dig down and see who we have. So Steph says, I love the college mini with the bridge anchors and the one unknown brand with the bridge anchors and stitching on top. So she's specifically talking about the episode that we had, the live episode. And so that was her favorite bag. So I love that. All right. So congratulations, Steph. And then on April 30th, we asked, what is something you're looking forward to doing this summer? Okay, so let me do a little mixing. And see who we have. So Nyasha. So Nyasha says, I'm looking forward to summer fruits. Yes. I'll tell you what, isn't that the truth? Fruit is so much better in the summer, fruit and vegetables. So I agree. That's a good thing to look forward to. Okay, and then the last one was, what is your favorite kind of fabric to use as lining? I'm interested to know about this because, there's so many different kinds that you can use. And so, let's see what we have here. So Dale Ward says, I've always liked the feel of satin in the interior of a bag and like to use satin twill and linen for an upscale feel in everyday bags. Really enjoyed the designer thread featuring Nyasha's handbags. All right. Well, congratulations, Dale. Okay, so to all of you, Steph, Nyasha, and Dale, congratulations. Make sure you email info@simplyclassic.net. Let us know you won, and we'll go ahead and get you the pattern of your choice. So good stuff. So make sure that you do that within the next 30 days to claim your prize. And for everyone else, stick around because we have another one at the end of the show. So now it is time to sew. Tonight is a sewing episode. So last week I told you about our featured pattern, which is the Roseanne. Of course, you can see some Roseannes here behind me. And it is written with faux rolled handles. Now, if you're using real leather and not vinyl, you may want to try your hand at making a real leather rolled handle. And that's what we're going to do today. A lot of you asked me how to do this. So that's what I'm going to show you today. So I have a short demonstration for the process. We're going to play that now, and then when we come back, I can answer any questions you may have. So let's watch the video. All right, we are going to start out with a couple of things. Let me go over what you need. First is you need a piece of handle, okay? So now this can be as long as you want, of course, depending on what kind of bag you're putting it on. And usually you want some sort of decorative edge here. We have a free pattern piece on our website. It's just called the Decorative Strap Edge. So I went ahead and cut one out. And on the wrong side, I went ahead and put it on the very edge, used a pen and drew it out, and then just you can either use a pair of scissors or a craft knife to cut it out, okay? So I did that on both sides. The other thing I did was drew a line down the center. Okay, so you can see I have a line just drawn right down the center of the leather piece, okay? So this is going to be the leather we're using. You're going to need some scrap of your leather. Now you want it to be just slightly less wide than your handle. Okay, so this is a piece of scrap, and you can see, you know, it's not quite as wide. You can see a little bit of the leather here on each side, and that's all I need. I'm not really worried about what this looks like right now. And then you need some kind of core. Now, there is such a thing as leather core for leather handles. It's made out of leather. And if I had some of that, you know, that's theoretically what I would be using here. I don't. So this is just regular piping. Now, it just happens to be black, okay? But you can, and it's very soft, this one. You can use firm, there's so many different types of cord that you can use. What we're going to do is we're going to use I'm going to use barge cement because that's my preferred glue for leather. And I'm going to go ahead and put glue along this handle. And then once it is, you know, about dry and basically sticky, we're going to go ahead and put this cord down. So I have this is my just protective coat. It's just a piece of shelf lining. It's about to a point where it probably needs to get thrown away and I need to get myself a new one, but I just use it over and over and over. And when I put this glue down, I am not going to put it all the way to the tip. Okay, I'm just going to put it about an inch into the decorative part because that's where my core is going to. Now when you put this glue on, you're going to want to make sure you get all the way to your edges. Okay, once the glue is dry, we are going to take the core and we're going to lay it right on top of our line. Now you want to make sure you center this on your handle. So I'm just going to kind of take a quick little note as to where the center of this handle is. And you don't have to, I'm just going to put a little mark with my pen. And then the center of the core, and stick that right on top of that line. Okay, so you see again that the core actually extends down into the decorative portion of the handle, which is going to get sewn to our bag. So from here, we are going to go ahead and put a little bit of glue on this bottom part, and then we're going to take a scrap piece, we'll put glue on this, and we're going to put this right on top. So I'm going to zoom you in. And we're going to go back to our glue. I'm going to first cut a piece. Now I want to make sure that this piece is going to go all the way to the tip. And I want to make sure it comes up to about, a ½ inch to maybe an inch with up to the handle. So that's going to be, I'm just going to cut this piece in half. It'll probably be about right. And you also want to make sure width-wise that it covers the entire width. Okay, so that looks about right. I'm not worried about it covering the width here. I'm worried about it covering the width where the decorative handle is. So we'll go ahead and put some glue. And again, make sure you get all the way to the edge. Okay, then I'm going to repeat that process and put glue on the other side as well. I'm going to go ahead and put this together. I'm going to go ahead and take all of this, get it out of the way. And we are going to take this part of the handle and we're going to put it right on this piece. Okay, so let me move this out of the way. And I want to make sure I have, again, enough leather up here so that when I pinch these together, it hides it and get all the way to the point. So I'm just going to take the point of this, put it right at the end, and go ahead and push this down. And you can put it right around the core. Okay, so you can see now you have a little bump there in your core, where your core is. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, now from here, I'm going to take the rest of the handle and I'm just going to fold it up and make sure, if I can, to get these edges meeting. We're going to trim them afterwards, but I want to get them as close as possible and make sure that I fold this leather right around that core, okay? Now, before I fold it here at the end, I want to go ahead and trim this area. So you, again, can either do that with a craft knife or you can use scissors, whichever is easier for you. And you're just going to use the main part as a guide and go around. I'm actually going to use a craft knife. So of course, when using a craft knife, you want to get back down to your cutting board. I'm just going to very carefully cut around. Of course, if you have a new blade, it would make it a little bit easier. Okay, so from now that that's completed, I'm going to go ahead and finish up by pinching these together. Now, we don't have any glue on the leather right here, so you can actually take a wonder clip to hold that in place. Okay, so here we have the handle all pinched together. Just a little bit of wonder clip here at the bottom where we have no glue. And you can actually use a bone folding tool right along the edge of the piping or your core, and that's just going to help the glue adhere there and hold this in shape. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go to the machine, and you're going to want to use either a piping foot if you have it, or if not, you're going to need to use your zipper foot because we're going to stitch as close as we can to the piping. Now, I have a ½ inch piping foot, and you can see here that I have a pretty big area that I can fit a piece of piping. This piping is actually 0.39. It's not quite 1/2 inch, but it will get close enough so that when I stitch with it, you can see that that piping is going to fit right there in that groove, and I'm going to be able to stitch super close to the core. If you do not have a piping foot, no worries. All you have to do is remove your back presser foot and attach your zipper foot, and then you'll be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and put my piping foot on, and then we'll stitch the handle. Okay, now that my piping foot is on, I'm going to go ahead and stitch starting here at this point and then stitch all the way over to the other side. Okay, so now that the handle's stitched, we're going to take it back over to the table and we're going to trim the seam allowance back. Trimming the seam allowance back can be a little bit tricky because typically when we cut, we obviously want the better part of our project, our pattern piece, to be on, I'm right-handed, so it's going to be, my ruler is going to be on the left side, and we would cut this way. But we have a core in here, so we're not going to be able to place a ruler on there. If you are steady and you have a good hand, then you could certainly just take a craft knife and very carefully come straight down and cut. Now, if you don't trust your abilities, and I would fall into that category, I'm going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to basically cut backwards. Not my favorite thing to do, but I feel like by using a ruler, it is going to give me a lot more control over getting a nice straight line. You could certainly use scissors here if you would like, but you don't want this to be choppy at any point, okay? So I have a smaller ruler here because my longer rulers are longer than the handle itself, and I certainly don't want to fight with it that way. I'm going to put the ruler so that it looks like I have about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And you can do a couple of things. You can either use a craft knife, you can use a blade like this if you want to go ahead and put a new blade in and do it, or you can use a rotary cutter, whatever works best for you. I am going to use my rotary cutter. Okay, I didn't go all the way to the end because I didn't want to accidentally cut my little end. So I'll just use a pair of scissors to get that part off. Okay, and then I will make sure this is lined up. And then just use scissors to cut this very end. Now the end's a little thicker because remember we had 2 layers of leather in there. Okay, so from here we pretty much have our rolled handle done. Now, typically at this point what you want to do is go ahead and base coat, put a layer of base coat all the way around the handle, including this section here, and also some edge paint. Now, if you're using a veg tan leather, obviously you're not going to finish it that way. Instead, you're going to burnish it. This is a chrome tan leather, so I will do the base coat and the edge paint. Once that is completed, then we would stitch this onto our bag. Now, when we stitch it onto the bag, you're going to need to use a little bit of double-sided tape. We do have the core coming down into the handle a little bit. So we're not going to stitch across. Instead, we're going to come up to the end. We're going to come down and kind of do a little V and then go around the rest of the handle. So I'm going to take another scrap piece of leather, and I'm going to use a different color, a solid color, so that everything doesn't blend in too much. And I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm just going to stitch down one of these so you can see how that is done. Again, make sure you base coat, edge paint, all that before you do this stitching. We're going to go ahead to the machine and stitch this handle down as if this was the front of the bag. Okay, we are going to pretend this is the front of our bag, and we have our handle completed here. We're going to pretend the handle is base coated or has some edge paint on it and everything's looking all pretty. Even without it, it still kind of looks pretty. So we have, you can see the bump here, okay, that's where our cord comes down to. We can't stitch across that, and we don't want to. So we can do one of two things. We can either go ahead and stitch a V, meaning we would come down to where the all right, we're going to make pretend the handle is base coated or has some edge paint on it and everything's looking all pretty. Even without it, it still kind of looks pretty. So we have, you can see the bump here, okay, that's where our cord comes down to. We can't stitch across that, and we don't want to. So we can do one of two things. We can either go ahead and stitch a V, meaning we would come down to where the core ends and then go back up. Or we can just stitch down each side, you know, down, turn around, and go back up to the other side. I am, after, you know, thinking about it and kind of go back and forth, I decided once I got over here that I really just wanted to stitch down each side. So the first thing I'm going to do is to take and put a small dot right at the point I want to turn. Because a lot of times as we stitch, we come down and we think we're right at the point, even with the point, and we're not. At least that's how it happens with me. So what I want to do is make sure that I hit that point perfectly. So I'm just going to put a little dot, about 1/8 of an inch away. And I know that once I come down, I want to turn right at that point. So I put my regular foot back on. I'm going to stitch using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And the other thing is I want to make sure I start and stop at the same point. So you can do the same thing. You can go ahead and put a dot on that so that you know exactly where to start and stop each time. You can't go obviously all the way up to the very tip here. You're going to have to stop, somewhere in this area. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a dot there. Make a dot on the other side. And that way I know where to start and stop as well. Now you can use some double-sided tape here if you'd like to help hold this in place. But I was making this on a bag and I want to make sure it's exactly straight. It's not going to shift on me. That's exactly what I would do. For this purpose, I'm just going to go ahead and stitch. Now, you might need your zipper foot, especially when you're up here at this point. I think I do. Even though I switched this out from the cording foot, I still think my zipper foot is going to be a better option so that it doesn't, this larger part of the foot doesn't interfere with the core part. So let me go ahead and put that on real quick. It's an easy fix. Take the time to do it. It'll make a difference. Definitely in the stitches and in how your project works or looks. And of course, this is easy to do. Okay, it just takes a minute. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and stitch. Now, this is not a part that you want to pull your threads through to the back. Okay, this is your handle. This is going to basically, depending on how much you stuff your bag, it could be the deciding factor on whether your handles fall off. So back stitch here, okay? Go ahead and do a little back stitch. I am going to do 1/8 of an inch. Again, come down to that point and then go up to the other side. Okay, so I'm approaching this point. I want to make sure that I am right on that dot. I'm going to turn and I'm going to come up the other side. I'm going to make sure I stop right at that dot I made on the other side. Do a back stitch. Okay, and you can see from the back how that's stitched on. And then from the front, here we have it. Okay? And that's on there good. Okay? So, that is how you do a leather rolled handle. Of course, you'd stitch your other one on the other side. You would use thread to match. All that would blend in. This leather is like a lizard leather. So, your stitches, whenever you stitch on this type of leather, they fall in the ridges and they always tend to look a little bit wonky. I mean, that's just how it does. So you really want to make sure when you're using this type of leather, you match your stitches or you match your thread to your project. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial, how to make a Okay, so we are back. Sorry about it freezing in the middle of all that. I don't know, we battle with technology sometimes. We're trying all different kind of things. I don't know why it froze, but I'm glad you were able to see it. What we're going to do is post that entire tutorial on YouTube so that you can go back and rewatch it again and see it in its entirety without freezing, okay? Because that was a good one, right? So if you like the leather I used in that video, we do have some available on the website. You can find the link below or just search the website for embossed ring lizard and it will come up. Okay, we had some really great questions, so let's take a look at what those are now. So Mary asked, is there any hoarding that you want to stay away from that has issues sticking to the glue? So that's a really good question. With leather cement, the way it theoretically works is that you're supposed to put leather on both sides of whatever medium you're using. So theoretically, this stuff should stick to rocks. And I'm not, I'm saying that jokingly, but I'm also saying that realistically, because I have seen people actually put some leather cement on the back of some like larger gemstones, and they put it on the back of the leather and they glue those together, and then they'll put like a piece of leather on top and do some fancy stuff, which we may do in the future, but it does help it stick. So as long as you have some glue on both sides of whatever you're using, you should be okay. Now, I did not put any glue on the actual cording in this case because I was just kind of laying it down and then folding the leather handle around it. And of course, I had leather on both sides of that handle, so sandwiched in between. If I really wanted to make sure that the cording was going to stay put throughout that whole process, I would have just taken and put a little bit of glue on the underside of that cording, and once it dried, stuck it in place, and then it definitely would not have moved. I've seen people use, well, let me just say to start out, there is actual leather cording that is really can be used for these leather handles. That is probably the most proper thing to use, but you can use, like you saw there, either some kind of cotton or polyester binding as well. I've seen and heard people using fish tank tubing and all kinds of different stuff. So, use what you have. Once it's in there, nobody's going to know. Just make sure that it has the feel that you want. You obviously want it to be flexible, but you want it to have enough body that can stand up by itself too. Okay, so Kelly asked, does that glue stick to your needle? Should you use a special needle? So that's a good question. It does not stick to the needle. Now, you need to make sure the glue dries before you stitch, of course. That's always a key thing. But whenever you're using leather cement, whether you're using a barge like what I use, which is a chemical-based, or a water-based, you really want to make sure the glue has dried before you even put your two pieces together. So once you do that, you should be okay. I have had a few people in leather classes say that they had a problem with it sticking, but my guess is just it just wasn't quite dry yet. So just make sure everything's good and dry, and then you should be okay. Okay, and then Kelly also asked, would you use base coat and paint if using vinyl? I would. I probably would try to stick to leather as much as possible when doing rolled handles. It's not 100% necessary. You could use vinyl. What I might do on vinyl is definitely base coat and edge paint like if you were going to do a pointed edge like you saw me do there, definitely, do the sides of that. For the handle part, you might be able to make the handle slightly wider and fold it under first and then fold them together. And that might give you a nice edge, a nice folded edge on the longer part of the handle. The other thing is you got to make sure you really get the measurement exactly right, because you're not going to be able to trim it off once you do that, because it'll be double folded. Okay. And then Sonia asks, which base coat and paint do you like to use? So I have different base coats for depending on what I'm using. If I'm using leather, I will really love using the Uniters base coat. You get it from Rocky Mountain Leather. It's specifically for leather. It's much thinner than what we use on faux leather. If you're using a base coat on faux leather, you're going to want to use like the Ghirardini. It gives a nice, almost rubbery kind of feel, and it's nice and thick. Works really well. For the paint, I just use whatever. I use the same for both. So I like the Vernus paint, which is again from Rocky Mountain Leather. It is heatable, and I have a tiny little iron that I sometimes can heat it up a little bit. It smooths it out. Or you can also use Uniters. So those are basically my favorites. There's so many different paints out there. See what you can get, use what you like. I tend to get like basic colors and then just mix paints until I get the color I want if I'm using a really unique color leather. But for the most part, you know, any of those paints are really good quality. The base coat is what makes a difference for me. Okay. And then Jennifer says, if you didn't want to add them directly onto the bag and attach them to hidden D-ring connectors, would you just fold them under and sew across or maybe rivet? And yes, absolutely, that's what I would do. So of course you wouldn't want to cut that fancy kind of English point in it. You probably just leave it straight and flat. And then what you do is just wrap it around a connector and go ahead and, like you say, rivet or stitch it in place, and then just edge paint the sides, and you should be good to go on that. Yeah. And then Kelly asks, so with the leather you use, it has two colors. Would you use the darker thread or the lighter thread, or half and half? So that's a good question. I tend to go darker with my thread than lighter if I'm trying to match. So if I have a solid color and I have a thread that's a little darker, I'm going to go with it for sure. If I have a two-toned, I'm typically going to go with the darker of the two colors. Now, you know, there's no rules on that. Obviously, we can do, as sewists, we can do whatever we want with it. But, you know, as a general rule of thumb, and to try to keep the bags looking professional, you know, that's typically what I would do. Now, that's not to say that some beautiful designer bags have, you know, maybe a cream base with brown accents, and they use brown thread throughout the whole thing. I think that looks amazing. So, you know, it kind of depends on the bag. It depends what you're doing. With quilting, sometimes, you know, tone on tone is probably has a little more sophistication than if you use a different color, but the different color thread on quilting is absolutely gorgeous too. So, you know, just kind of see how you feel that day and go with that. And then Lorraine says, when you say dry, is it tacky? Yes, it's tacky and sometimes totally dry even, especially with the barge. With the Aquilum, I kind of wait till it gets tacky, and literally I'll put my finger on it and lift the leather, and it'll stick to my finger, and you can tell it's just, like if I were to pick it up, it would just stick to my fingers. With the barge, a lot of times I can actually wait till it's totally dry. Like I touch it and it doesn't even stick to me, but it will stick to itself. So that's something that is a definite learning curve when working with leather. A lot of people are not sure, like how long does it really take for that leather, cement, or glue to dry? And I think that what we do is we just sometimes get maybe a little impatient or think it's dry, and maybe it's a little too quick, and then we run into problems. Sometimes we have problems with it when we adhere our stabilizers or stiffeners to our leather. It kind of bubbles and buckles, and usually that's a sign of it either not being dry or having too much glue on there. So, you know, we live and we learn, and that's part of sewing, is we learn different things. And obviously our leather classes are great for that because you're able to try some really cool things, and obviously our students have learned a lot from them. So those are all really great questions. I appreciate you asking. I think that was a great tutorial. I know a lot of you have been asking about that. Again, we'll post it on YouTube so you can go back and watch it in its entirety with no interruptions. So again, we appreciate your support on that. So now it's time for designer bag inspiration, and I want to, oh, no, it's not. Now we are going to talk about some designer bag inspiration, not Artistry Avenue. I was thinking Artistry Avenue, but said designer bag inspiration. We are going to take a look at a few designer bags. Now, usually in the sewing episodes, we don't do this, so it threw me for a loop, but we have a few bags we want to show you today, and they all have rolled handles. And you know, there's something a little unique about each one of them, and I want to give you a little bit of inspiration. So let's take a look at these first. So we have two very similar and simple bags. We have Christian Louboutin, and then we have this other bag called Gaia. And all they did was attach the rolled handles. One is pointed inward and maybe a little bit more severe of a point. The other one is pointing outward. So, you know, it's amazing how you can have bags that are very, very similar, and yet just how the bag or the strap connectors are attached, or how the straps are attached, just changes the look of the bag. To me, these are very different looking bags. and it has everything to do with those rolled handles. So this bag here is really interesting. It's a bag by Jacques Mus, and of course we've talked about him before. And what they did is they attached one side of the handle on the bag, and on the other side they attached hardware. Now, before the episode, we had to get online and look at this a little closer, because my question was, is there just one handle on that bag? And originally we thought, no, there's another handle just hidden behind it. And then we looked at it more closely, and there's not. There's only one handle on that bag. It's on the front and it's on the flap. Very interesting. But the bag is really little, so that's what makes it okay. I think if the bag was any larger than what it is, it probably wouldn't work. But this is, anyway, needless to say, a very interesting look. Here we have a Prada bag. This is called the Bonnie. And these are rolled handles. And what they did here is they just attached them in a very unique way. They took a piece of the leather that was attached to the rolled handle, only went down so far with the piping inside, wrapped it around this belt, and then I'm sure they stitched it to the bag as well. So I think it was Kelly that had the question on that. This is how you would do that. You would just put it around a strap connector or a piece of hardware, rectangle ring, something like that, and you could certainly attach it that way. And then this here is a bag by Lila Lane, and it is, again, a rolled handle, and they attach the rolled handle to O-rings, and then the O-rings are attached to a strap connector on the bag. Okay, very unique. I'm not sure if that O-ring has leather around it or if it's just wrapped in cording. But either way, I'm tending to think it's probably wrapped in cording, because this is kind of a raffia looking bag, very organic looking, and really like the way they did this. I like the way those strap connectors fold to the front instead of the back. And then finally, we have this book tote by Dior. And I'd be interested to know if you can look at this and see what this is. I think this almost looks to me like a rolled hem on a serger is what sewed these straps together. Looks like they went down, if you can tell from that little picture on the right, looks like they just did a rolled edge on the serger down the handle pieces, like to hold the handle together. And then they also did that around the edges of the handle as well. And then it looks like these are actually attached to the inside of the bag instead of the outside of the bag. So very interesting, this Dior bag, how all this is done. I'm assuming that's fabric and not faux or vinyl. It looks more like fabric to me. So now you know how designers make their rolled handles. You know, obviously it's a little more unique and decorative. I hope that gave you some inspiration. If you try some of these techniques, make sure you post them in the Simply Classic Bag Making community on Facebook, because I would really love to see what you make. So now it's time for Artistry Avenue, my favorite part. And every week we feature 3 bags that were posted on the Simply Classic Bag Making community on Facebook. If we feature your bag, you get a free PDF pattern, and you have 30 days to email info@simplyclassic.net to let us know which pattern you would like. So now let's take a look at this week's artists. So Nyasha made this novella, and how amazing is that? I love this red geometric vinyl that she used. And of course she used red thread on there, which is absolutely gorgeous. The clasp is beautiful, and just love the color, you know, the contrast. It's the color of that kind of brown pulls out in the faux. I mean, the whole thing is just beautiful. And look, it looks like she has her pocket on the inside. Love her lining as well. It is very colorful, and really love this bag. So that is fantastic. Good job, Nyasha. And then Susan made this Eva, and when I saw this, I thought, oh, this is cool. So she said that when she saw this bag, immediately a wine bag came to mind. And so she decided that she was going to turn it into that. So of course she used the large size, and she ended up making a pocket that a wine bottle fit in. And what a great gift bag, right? Very, very clever. I'm also going to just interject here. When we were in Houston, or when we were in Chicago, one of our customers came up to the booth and said she wanted that bag for her bowling shoes. She was going to keep the pockets out and make a bag without pockets and just stick her bowling shoes in there. What a clever idea that is too. This bag can be used for so many different things. That's what I love. I love when we think outside the box. But this is really a beautiful, beautiful bag, Susan. And then Lorena made this Roseanne. And this, of course, is our featured pattern of the week. She used some of our misprinted vinyl. We still have it on the website, so make sure you grab it if you'd like. There is a misprint in there somewhere. If you can find it, that's great. We obviously, once we found it, we couldn't unsee it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. But I love the way she added this tassel. Love the black hardware. It is absolutely gorgeous. So excellent job, Lorena. So congratulations to all of our featured artists. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing bags. Don't forget to email info@simplyclassic within the next 30 days to let us know which PDF pattern you like. So before we move on to our Q&A, let's talk about our giveaways. We're giving away 2 PDF patterns of your choice. We'll choose one live stream winner from the chat and one replay winner from the comments. So if you're watching live on Thursday, here's how to enter. All you need to do is type the word roll, ROLL, in the chat, like rolled handles. So please just enter the keyword one time, and we're going to randomly pick a winner before we do our Q&A. This is open worldwide. If you're watching the replay, you can also enter. If you're watching the replay, you can also enter to win. Just leave a comment that includes 2 things: your first name and your favorite kind of bag, strap, or handle. You have until next Wednesday to enter, and I'll randomly choose a winner on next week's episode. So let's see if we have any questions. Brenda said, I just want to let you know that I'm loving my Burnett B08 for my bag making. Fantastic. Thanks for all of your information on it. You're very welcome. I love my B08 too. It is a bag or a machine I go to often. I had an older domestic machine that I've put away and I'm not even using anymore. And what I typically do is use a combination of my Burnett and my industrial to make my bags. Although you see, because I do it in videos, you can make the whole bag on the Burnett, no problem. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure that you check our website. We do have a 15% off coupon code for a Burnett, a B08. So check that out. All right, let's see if we have a winner. So Quilted Cactus Tony, congratulations. Please email info@simplyclassic.net if you can do that within the next 24 hours and let us know which pattern you would like. We'll get it to you. So thank you so much for joining me for the Bag Makers Workroom. Again, I apologize for our technical difficulties. Make sure you join us next Thursday, May 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for an episode about applique and reverse applique. Don't forget to submit your Simply Classic bags by posting them in the Facebook group or emailing them to info@simplyclassic.net. Please remember to click that thumbs up button on your way out. And until next time, everybody, happy sewing.